Hello, 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 one and all. Hope everybody can see me and hear me. Looks like everything is working according to plan. Very good, very good. So welcome everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Finally getting my little studio set up here. It's not a green screen. It's just a classic video and photography backdrop that I've just hung up to give it a little color, a little contrast, rather than the white wall. So thank you all for joining me today. I already got some comments about the subject that I chose for today. And I chose it, what if it's not your fault? I chose it because it's just been coming up so much of late in the private sessions that I've been doing that I figured I would do dedicate some time to talking about it. And it enough, and on a deep enough level it came up that I'm going to be doing a workshop on it, not this week but next, I think next Tuesday. Yeah, next Tuesday. A week from Tuesday. After the show, after the Homeschool Live. You know, it's classic in childhood trauma and in child abuse of any kind that the child blames themselves. It's my fault. Now, the fact of the matter is, you know, we know as adults it's not. They're completely innocent. But you have to look at it from the perspective of the child, right? Your parents are gods. They can do no harm. And to a certain extent, all grown-ups are. Even an older brother that's old enough falls under that category. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're a child, you are completely vulnerable. You are powerless, utterly powerless. For the first decade or maybe and a half of our lives, we are completely dependent upon and at the mercy of our caregivers. And if they don't do their job, we die. I mean, it's really that simple. If the neglect is extreme enough, we simply can't survive, because we cannot survive on our own. Now, that sense of utter dependency and bonding leads us to always be deferring to whoever the authority happens to be. I mean, it starts out as our parents, but then it becomes teachers and priests and pastors and politicians and, you know, professors, people that carry authority within the culture. And if that part of us has never been liberated to be self-validating and have our own sense of authority, we spend our whole lives deferring to external authorities. Now, the upshot of that is, because we have absolutely no power, and when we recognize that powerlessness, as a child, and this is an unconscious recognition, this is very much a recognition of the nervous system, recognizing that I am powerless, completely dependent upon them, and they are basically causing me suffering and misery. Something inside has to come up with some kind of a compensation for it, some kind of a solution for it. This is the way our psychology and the emotional system works. We have to have some way of some story, some, you know, assumption about reality, and later on an ego identity that compensates for that. Now, if I don't have any power whatsoever, but if I say to myself, it's my fault, guess what I've just done? I've given myself some power over circumstances over which I have no power. My parents are abusive, or, you know, a relative is abusive, or teachers are abusive, starting mostly with our parents. Right? The only thing I can do to try to compensate is to take the blame. Because if I take the blame, then there's something I can do about it. The reality is there isn't anything you can do about it. But that is just way too painful and frightening. I mean, it's terrifying. I mean, it's utterly terrifying to the child. It's a matter of life and death. And so when the child says, it's my fault, I will be better, there's like this power we get. So now we try to modify our behavior to do everything right. We try to be the good girl or the good boy. At some point, we actually flip into the opposite and become totally rebellious and totally rejecting of everything, which is simply the opposite reaction to the same problem, trying to get some kind of power when we don't feel we have it. But the real problem is that lack, that inner lack of a sense of inner authority and self-validation isn't going to go away because I try to compensate for it. Something much deeper has to happen. And so what I've found coming up in a lot of the sessions that I've been having lately, and probably over the last several months, I've had just an enormous number of them that have resulted from sexual molestation and really severe abuse as children. Horror stories. And yet, in every single instance, there was this unconscious thing going on that somehow thought I was to blame for it. Right? Now, it's really unconscious. When I say unconscious, I don't mean an unconscious mind somewhere, a repository of thoughts. What I mean is the actual structure of the autonomic nervous system itself, so that it is a set of reactive patterns. It's not thought, but it can produce thought. It's not an emotion, but it can produce emotion. It's far more subtle. I just have to call it an energetic assumption. But what if you're not to blame? Now, I'll be doing the workshop that's going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours of nothing but using EFT, because it's the kind of thing that requires some kind of a physical intervention as well as self-inquiry to help kind of loosen that up. But so far I've found that when I've decided to go down that path with somebody, there's an enormous sense of relief that takes place. Something really quite overwhelming happens. Just being willing to consider the possibility that it wasn't my fault, that I'm not to blame for this. And which means I don't have to compensate for it anymore, because I've been innocent from the get-go. The nervous system had to assume that shape in order to just keep me alive long enough that I could face my actual powerlessness, my actual complete lack of ability to protect myself against them, which was the actual fact. But now, as adults, you can. They're not there anymore. You can set boundaries. You can actually go, yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. That's actually setting boundaries is going to be our next show on Om School Live. So I wanted to just spend a moment and talk about that. Right now, just as a little exercise, I'm not going to do any the tapping, which actually helps it, but right now, just think about something that's bugging you in your life, something that's not working. And look, it starts with the parents, but then it's the school, right? You didn't follow the rules, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, you didn't study the way you were supposed to, you didn't do well on the tests. They're all based on this sense that you're not enough and it's your fault, right? Religion, original sin, you're not enough, but it's your fault, right? Then we get into self-help, the New Age stuff, right? It's like, it's all your own thinking. Law of attraction. You attracted this self to you. It's the same bullshit. Blaming the victim for the sins of the perpetrator. You could see how it's just proliferated, this underlying assumption, because it hasn't been looked at as an underlying assumption. Remember, assumptions are something that are just accepted as is. You just, oh yeah, this is it. This is the way it is, right? So an assumption isn't seen as an assumption. It's the truth until there's enough of an awakening to go, wait a minute, is that really true? And now that assumption comes out into the light and gets scrutinized. You go, my God, it's not true. But then comes the need to retrain the system out of that energetic pattern, out of the whole conditioning based on the assumption that it was true, and bring it into the light of day. So right now, think about anything, right? The thing you wanted to manifest in your life and you couldn't, the relationships that hadn't been working. Why do I choose the same kind of man every single time? And then just say to yourself, what if it's not my fault? I know I've participated, there's conditioning there, but what if I'm not to blame for this? What if I'm not to blame for somebody else being an asshole? What if I'm not to blame because things didn't go the way I wanted them to? There's countless elements and components and causes and connections in the environment that make something go or not, that make something happen or not. I'm only one factor in this thing. What if it's not my fault? Just see what that feels for a second. Just the question, not the assertion, right? Because intellectually you can know it's not your fault. Oh yeah, that's right. I was an innocent child. I was abused. Intellectually, and then you try to, but if you try to assert it against the underlying energetic assumption, you'll get this. So I don't assert anything. Just say, what if? What if it's not true? I've lived my life as if it was. So there's a lot of habit energy behind it. But what if it isn't true? What if I'm not to blame? What does that feel like? And then take it in even a step further. Who would I be if I didn't blame myself all the time? What would I be like? It's a powerful, powerful exercise to just invite into consciousness the possibility that the assumptions being held very tightly in consciousness right now are not true. Just to invite the whole energy system to take a look for itself. Not take your word for it. You're not asserting anything, but just say, hey, what if it isn't true? This is how I work in all the sessions. This is how I teach people to coach. This is inner reconciliation and my take on EFT. But I think you'll notice that if you just pose the question, you'll find reactions inside the system. There could be, oh God, it's got to be true. There can be a recoiling, there can be a resistance, there can even be a part that's going, wow, what would that be like? But you're probably all feeling a little bit of space open. You know, even if you're relatively healthy and you've worked through a lot of the stuff in the past and your life is functional, this is so fundamental. This is original sin. Right? It is so ingrained in our culture, guilt and punishment. Right? The law doesn't, even our legal system, it doesn't want to look at extenuating circumstances. Right? When you do want to look at extenuating circumstances, cultural biases, and all sort of that thing, they in a very derogatory way accuse you of being a social justice warrior and trying to let people off the hook and not be responsible for themselves. You can see it has permeated absolutely everything. So even if you're relatively free from it, it's still worth being watchful and vigilant, and certainly being willing to help others entertain the idea that, whoa, maybe this is a result of what happened to me, and I'm not the one who's responsible, who's to blame for it. Obviously, I'm saddled with it. I've got the one that has to correct it. Nobody else is going to. But I didn't cause it. Just ponder that for a bit. And I will say hello. I will say hello now to everyone. I will be turning to my right to say hello. There's Carl in Ireland, Robbie in Romania, Roberto is, you're in Madrid now. back in Madrid. There's Ava in Poland, Ursula in Portugal, Rosario also from Madrid, Dorothy in Denmark, Roseanne in Southern California, Barbara in Sweden, John in Ireland. Isn't this wonderful? The other John Watson in Scotland, Creative Revolution, and I know she's in Gozo. GP is fashionably late. Greetings, and David and Elaine in the southeast of England. Diane. Hi, Babaji. Thank you for your blog on prayer. As I follow your teaching, all is becoming clear and so easy. No more need to wonder who to address, just feeling the love and gratitude. Oh, so beautiful. Yes, yes. You don't have to worry about, am I praying right? I just did a blog about prayer. A little bit ago, I did a workshop on, praying for the world. Excuse me, I have to sip on my mate as I'm working here. And can be such strict rules about it and the way it has to be said and what you can. It's like the self, the truth, the conscience, the truth of your being, which is what God is simply a word for, right? Always hears. The truth is always here. It always hears. How could it not? And the more sincere and open and honest and completely blunt our prayers are, the more it resonates. Because the closer we get to truth, the more of truth we resonate with. And since truth is your real being, there's dimensions to prayer that can open up. But just the open heart, willing to surrender to God, however you conceive that to be, it doesn't even matter how you conceive it, because no concept we have is ever going to be adequate to capture the infinite. So no concept is going to be right. But even just thank you, even just a willingness to look around and get perspective about where you're at. Not comparing it. I really don't like the idea of saying, well, there are people starving here and there, and people having horrible, and people are. I mean, all that does is actually make us feel guilty. Instead, go look at what I have. Okay? And even if I don't feel like I have anything, thank you. I'm alive. I'm a self-aware being. Sometimes I wish I wasn't, because it seems like all I'm aware of is pain and suffering, but I'm a self-aware being. So I'm for that. Thank you. I don't even know who I'm saying thank you to, but it doesn't matter. There's no need to wonder who to address. Just open yourself up to the feeling of that love and gratitude, because the reality is the love and gratitude that you're feeling is the one to address. That is God. That's God known. The ultimate of God, the absolute awareness, is beyond and prior to the love and gratitude that we feel. But it is because of the reality of that absolute that is beyond that makes it possible for us to feel the love and gratitude. They're not arbitrary. They're not emotions. They're not something that just accidentally happens. They're not the result of some kind of complex material process. They exist because there's a fundamental principle that allows for them to exist. And it's the nature of that fundamental principle, which I call love, that is reflected in that love and surrender and gratitude and appreciation and anything else we might feel. It's also the essence between our righteous indignation when we see injustice and we want to fix it. That's also God. And that's also a prayer. Because anything that is deeply felt, any desire that is deeply felt is prayer. It's such a beautiful subject, and it's such an ancient practice, and it's obviously so easily distorted by people who want to force on you a particular version of God, so your prayer has to look in a certain way so it's acceptable to God, right? It's like, oh my God, please. Just that is dominant, especially in Western religions, but it's also nonsense. And as has been shown time and time and time again, that is not the way Christ was. That's not the way Muhammad was, as far as I know. They simply weren't that way. So, thank you for that, Diane. I am so glad it is just helping you not worry about the how and just be totally into your heart and just speak your heart, because that's truth. At whatever level it may appear, that's truth. And if that's truth, then you are not only praying to God, you are praying as God. Because God is truth. Beautiful. Red rose for you. Hello, Sonia. When they say God loves you or you are loved, it feels confusing because I'm love and I'm part of God. It feels good, but yet I feel confused because it sounds externalized. Just your thoughts on that. Good to see you. Much love to you. Nice background. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. This is going to be my background for a while. Although I tend to kind of sink down in this chair, which I found in a secondhand store for $15. It's the perfect chair for my set. $15. Oh, and I got the 15% senior discount. How can you beat that? Yeah. Well, here's the thing. God is love. So your feeling of love is God. Every bit of affection you feel, whatever it looks like, that's love of work, love of music, love of your career, love of art, love of people, love of great ideas, love of your children, love of your friends. They're all different aspects of that invisible essence, which is love itself, which can't be ever fully expressed. I mean, it's just the infinite potential of love. But it is made manifest in everything that is love, whatever form it happens to take, right? Now, in the West, the idea of God is not of love itself. It is not of the Spirit, even though it's sprinkled throughout, and the mystics have seen it. In this culture in the West, in the Christian, Judaic, and Muslim traditions, God is the creator. God is not the essence of creation. God is not the essence of the self. God did not create the universe out of himself, is not immanent in the universe. There's God. He made the universe out of nothing. Right? He is a he, and therefore defines this relationship very much of a he relationship. It's hierarchical, and so now everything is defined by this relationship, and God is the ultimate other. Now, the mystics have contradicted that from time immemorial. Some have been accepted, like Rumi and Barliani, Meister Eckhart. Many others were completely rejected, like Christ, as were many of the mystics throughout all the medieval time, who were burned as witches. Some of the men escaped. None of the women mystics escaped. They were all burned, or else they managed to run away. But at any rate, this is the view of God that has been predominant for thousands of years. It is the most primitive view of God there is, and we see it in all sorts of different cultures of worshiping, the deities and the like. But there's always been those that have seen it not as the ultimate other, but as the true self, as the essence of all being, which is love itself. Now, because this is so ingrained in our culture, and that we've all been raised in it in one form or another, right? It's going to be something in the nervous system. There's going to be this, and of course we were raised with the fear of God. God wasn't to be loved, right? So yeah, you have to love God. But what that really means is fear God and be obedient. So the measure of your love was obedience, not closeness, not joy, right? Not love, not intimacy. Because God was the ultimate other, so far beyond, right? that it was always about obedience to rules, to the laws, to that sort of, to accepting him on his terms, to accepting his punishment, however irrational it might be. So yes, it is externalized, what you're talking about. The God that loves. God is not a being that loves. God is love itself. But we have twisted that into a being who supposedly loves, right? But, if there's any kind of transgression, you don't accept him as his word. If you don't accept, this horrific sacrifice that he demanded, a human sacrifice he demanded to pacify his ugly wrath, and if you don't accept that, he's going to send you to hell forever. You will not just be, put out of your misery. You will be punished for absolutely ever. But he loves you. What? Are you kidding? Could you imagine somebody you loved suffering and not wanting to do something about it? You'd suffer. So if there's a hell, it's God and his eternal suffering over having to obey the stupid rules he made himself. You can see the entire thing is utter nonsense. But it has been so deeply ingrained in us and associated with this existential fear that even when you know it's not true, there's something inside that feels that sense of separation. This is what satsang is all about. Healing, dissolving that sense of separation, that imaginary sense of separation. Because that idea grew out of a much more primitive, a much more primal sense of separation. And that separation began with the very first thought, I am this body. Prior to that, you are undifferentiated consciousness. Pure experience. There's no this or that or up or down. None of those things exist. Those are all categorizations of thought. They're categorizations of mental activity, but they don't exist for real. They're a projection on reality. So the mind, which is represented in Genesis as Adam, naming everything, making distinctions between everything. Right? So this becomes that, and that becomes that, and out of that then stories about everything. But all of that is an illusion. All of that is projected on the undifferentiated pureness of being, which is what you are. That's love. But this process is one that requires practice. Recognizing that whenever that feeling comes up, right, it feels good and I'm confused, right? Oh, well, to just be with that, right? To recognize that at the essence of that is the sense of being separate from the truth of your being. Now, how can you be separate from the truth of your being? I mean, the truth is the truth, right? You can certainly believe yourself to be separate. You can believe yourself to be something else. You can believe the truth is out there and not here. And therefore you'll have, experientially, it will appear, right, that somehow you've lost it. But look closely. Can there be any place where truth is not? Can there be any time when it was not true? So the truth of you must be here and now, right now. Which means the sense of separation is the illusion. That's the lie. As Christ put, you'll know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Well, if the truth can set you free, it's not like this manipulative power. It must mean that you are already free, but don't know it. You're living in the illusion, living in ignorance. Once the ignorance is corrected, where does the ignorance go? Does it go somewhere else? It vanishes. It's gone. It never really existed. So that separation, right, is something that it can keep popping up for years. It can just keep popping up even after enormous awakening has taken place. Just don't be concerned with the fact that it keeps popping up. There may be some confusion even that it pops up. Just recognize for what it is. This is just the old habit patterns of the mind, and you have been blessed with the vision to see that that's only what it is. You are the truth. It is the truth seeing the illusion. The illusion can't see itself. The truth recognizes the illusion as illusion. The moment you recognize that, there's no separation. You are the truth, recognizing, because that's the only thing that could. Only God knows God. Only God reaches God. Only God sees God. So when you see that love, when you say, I feel that God, I feel that love, that is God. So you see, you're not a part of God. God doesn't get divided into parts. You are God, manifested in a particular form. Like music manifests itself in a particular song, but it doesn't get into the song. It's not limited by it. The song is not a part of it, right? The song is the whole of it manifested, right? Because the whole is the whole. It's one. It's indivisible. And that's you. You are that love, and that is the truth. Now, holding on to that, right, you'll notice that the contradicting thoughts and feelings will come up, and you just go, they're contradicting thoughts and feelings. They're not the truth. They're the old habits. This is the truth. I am that love. Thank you for that, Red Rose. And hello Dale, good to see you. Hello beautiful, hello Jennifer. Hello, Creative Revolution. My friends think I'm to blame for everything they get triggered by. I'm so used to it, growing up with a family who did that. I think the best thing is to just stay alone so no one can get triggered by me, and then I can just be in peace. Well, all that will do will be to keep you from triggering them, keep you from triggering yourself, but that doesn't mean the trigger's there, and it certainly doesn't mean it's healed. Okay? I'm not saying go out there and start pushing people's buttons, but recognize that because it happened to you as a child, and of course as a child you take it, you just assume, yes, it is my fault, right? You have been trained to not only take it when it happens, but you'll tend to gravitate towards people who want you to serve that role. They want a dynamic of somebody they can blame, right? Now, it's not. This is subtle, right? Because that I'm to blame takes two forms when it gets ingested into our nervous system. It takes the form of the one who always says, I'm to blame, I'm to blame, I'm to blame, which in fact is there with everybody. Okay? Everybody has that underlying. On one hand, the manifestation of it is somebody who will just take it, right? You just feel somebody will blame you for something. You'll just feel the energy kind of drain out of you. It's like you don't know how to defend yourself. But the very same underlying idea, I am to blame, and there's no way a child can come to any other conclusion, okay? They can't. Therefore, that underlying energetic assumption is the same. It's in everyone. It will manifest as some as projecting their blame onto somebody else. Those people look for the ones who will take it, and that's the dynamic that gets created. That's a relationship made in hell, right? This is the basis of vampiric relationships. All of it works this way. The same underlying disturbance, the same underlying trauma manifests with two faces and creates a dynamic that makes relationships. Okay? Because that's in fact the role you played. If your family did that to you, which they did, then there was a dynamic that got created in the entire family that you became the projection, you became the lightning rod that allowed them to not pay any attention to their own feelings, right? And to not project their boundaries by basically asserting everything on you. You became the dumpster for them to just dump their own responsibility, right? Oh, it's so subtle the way mind works on this, but when you see it always comes from an initial traumatization of simply being ourselves, being allowed to be ourselves, and then be allowed to grow into a self-acceptance that carries its own authority and therefore makes boundaries. It says, this is not acceptable. But instead ends up, I'm so sorry, what did I do wrong? Immediately going to that. This is exactly what I want to undo in this next workshop. But the answer is to not stay alone. That's not the answer. Because all that will do is keep the button from being pushed, right? And the next time you're in a situation where that button can be pushed, it'll get pushed, and you'll just find yourself quaking. And it won't stop you from basically gravitating towards people who do that, because you don't know how to be any other way. So, in the blog that I've just published, but I'll be emailing about it. It comes out in a few hours, actually. I talk about how to start diffusing these triggers, and coming into a place of your own authority, where you can say yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. And it takes. It starts with inner work. And starting with the inner work, the introspection, the yoga of allowing, and really beginning to start bringing a balance to the system, you'll find yourself noticing the habit energy of taking the blame. Right? And in that noticing, you'll begin to get some distance from it. And eventually those that want to blame, because you don't take it anymore, those who want to give it won't be coming around because you don't take it anymore, right? Either they'll grow into a higher level and start more with introspection, or they'll just pass out of your life. Because that when that dynamic doesn't work anymore, they're not going to be there. Because you're no longer giving them what they want, right? And following that will be suddenly people will be appearing in your life who won't be doing that. Will actually be peers. They'll be dancing with you. They'll be equally sharing both responsibility and even desire for healing. And so then it becomes a true relationship. Right, in all levels. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I mean, this happens with friends, it happens at work. There are people always that take the blame, and other people who want to give it. Other people who want to give it. It happens in school, it happens with platonic relationships, communities, churches, it's everywhere. It's everywhere because it's one of the most fundamental traumas we get. Right? I'm not enough, I'm to blame for it. Even our religion, right? God didn't say, oh man, I really screwed up. They shouldn't have, boy, I wanted them to be different. No, he said, you did it. You did it, it's your fault. What? How can it be my fault? I've existed a total of 2 weeks. And it's my fault? You've been around forever? Give me a break. Oh, wow. Jennifer, what if I am... Did you finish this somewhere? Hello of Part USA? Huh? Well, you are. You couldn't say I am if you weren't. So, maybe if there's a question there, I don't see one, so maybe there will be later. Creative revolution. That's where I'm at. I'm alive, and I guess I should be grateful because different subject. All right. Oh my God, I just broke down in tears when you said how the law of attraction say you attract what? Yes, you attract. It's the same nonsense. It's the same thing, right? And how many? I mean, it's legendary. The teacher of the law of attraction, it doesn't work, and what do? They blame you. I mean, it's perfect for a con man, really. Not that they are. Most, I think there are some, but most are not. But you're to blame. You're to blame. Because otherwise you'd be asking for a refund. Ah, my, yes. It's amazing, isn't it? Kakwenda. Did I say that? Thank you, GP, for the selfless and very helpful work. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Hello, Robin. In Mississippi. Oh, great. USA. You're in, hello, of PA, USA? Oh, you're in Pennsylvania. Oh, well, wonderful. Thank you for addressing this subject, GP. Oh, you're very welcome. It's just really become, it's just come so much to the forefront because I found myself in every single session I'm doing with people now, almost everyone. I think there may be a couple of exceptions. In all the private sessions I've been doing with people, it's been there. There's just been this sense of I'm to blame. And it's been under the surface, right? And when I saw it, I went, okay, well, what if you're not? What if I'm not to blame? And people break down, and all of a sudden it's like this whole thing opens up. This whole, and burdens start coming off your shoulder. Because if I assume that I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, and I'm responsible for it, you've created, there's no way out of that. There's no way out. I am fundamentally flawed, it's all my fault, and there's nothing I can do about it. That, of course, is the primary fear, the terror the child feels that creates the trauma, that creates the disconnect, so that that trauma is forgotten, it's buried out, and that we spend our life trying to compensate for an assumption that says we can't actually compensate for it. This is the whole idea behind the idea of original sin, and that you're such a horrible sinner that you can't even pay the penalty for your own sin. So God has to sacrifice his another one, pure, right, in your stead, because you're so horrible, he can't even look at you. This is the most horrendous crime against humanity. Right? And this is Christianity. This is not the teaching of Christ, but it is Christianity, right? Which is the worst of the three. It took the already heaps of guilt in Judaism and put it on steroids. I'm not as familiar with obviously with Islam, but from what I've come to see and from the people I've worked with who are Muslim, it's pretty much the same thing. But there's the mystic tradition in Christianity. There's the Sufi mystics. There's even the mystic tradition of Kabbalah in the Judaism, which takes a completely different point of view. Although there are some more mainstream Kabbalah practices out there too that aren't all that much different, really. So, at any rate, you can see how it has infected at a very fundamental level the whole of human consciousness, and satsang. And what I'm attempting to do with my life is to uproot those things at that level of consciousness, down at the root of it. Because if you get to the roots, the rest will just dissolve. It'll just fall away. So that's where you got to go. There's Marty in Vancouver. Carl, hey GP, in your talk last week, you said that our true sense of being should be worshipped like God because it is God. How do we actually do this? And who would be the one doing the worshiping? Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I use that term because Nisargadatta said that, worship consciousness as God, because it is God, right? How do you do that? Well, worshiping, what does worship mean, right? Again, in the West, our idea of it is somebody really great up there, and I'm not. And I worship them because they're so great and I'm not, Or I worship a rock star or, some important statesman or something like that. There's this gap in between. But this is worshiping consciousness, which is right inside you as God, takes it away from there and turns it in here. Now, what does worship mean? We worship the ones we love, don't we? You fall in love with somebody, you worship them. Right? You just can't get enough of them. You want to be closer and closer and closer to them. That worship born in separation is, I can never be close to them. If I can just, if I can just touch the hem of their garment, if I can just, live in a tent outside their house. It's never the closeness the way we know when we fall in love, and we desire that closeness that is just, we can't get enough. We can't get enough, right? Now, to answer your other question, first, how do we do that is by turning that attention towards consciousness and just recognize that this consciousness that is emanating in me, right, that I feel, that is animating this, is the ultimate being. This is being itself. This is the ultimate infinite consciousness, the infinite God. So what I'm calling my consciousness is actually the consciousness. So who's worshiping this consciousness? Well, what could worship other than consciousness? Can unconscious worship? It can't. You see, there's this sense that there's something being worshipped and someone worshiping. Right? But when you look at the nature of consciousness itself, you see, the mind takes consciousness and makes it a thing. It becomes clinical. Consciousness, pure consciousness, right? It becomes, we still have this subtle thing of making it an other that I am now looking at or studying or meditating on or trying to become one with or worshiping, right? Well, who's that I? Is that another consciousness? Is there another God in contradiction to this one? Right? Or is the consciousness that's worshiping the consciousness? Is in fact that which is being sought the one doing the seeking? Right? It's simply this imaginary separation, right, that makes me one thing, consciousness another thing. But if consciousness is the one and all, then this consciousness, the one right here, the one hearing my words right now, is the consciousness. Worship that as the allness. Become one with it. Disappear into it. And that is, you don't disappear in the sense that there's no more you. You, as a separate entity, worshiping disappears until there's nothing left. As Balyani said, it is God that takes the last step on a journey that never happened. Or as Muji put it, the one who starts the inquiry does not finish the inquiry, but is finished by the inquiry. Just putting it into the context of worship brings it into the heart and not so much in the head. Right? And who could worship other than that which is conscious? So is consciousness divided up into a bunch of little consciousnesses? Is there a bunch of little consciousnesses and then one big one out there somewhere? Or is consciousness universal, infinite, boundless, everywhere present, dimensionless, timeless, which means the consciousness that is hearing my words right now, the consciousness that asked the question, is the self, is God. And there is no other. It is only the belief that there is something other than that, called me, a personal me, that obscures it. As Balyani also said, it is his oneness that veils him. We cannot see him because he is us. That's why you can't see it. It's me. I cannot see that which is me. I can only see from that which is me. That which you're looking for is where you are looking from. That which you are looking for is the one doing the looking. My addendum to St. Francis of Assisi. Are you getting that? Notice how the mind is forever making a separation between us and the absolute. There can't be a separation, otherwise there's two absolutes. Now you have two gods. You have another God. You have a second Lord, which you can't have. If the first one's infinite, there ain't any others. Jennifer says, thank you to this being that is, and the world that appears because of my perception. Thank you to this being that is. Yes. And the world that appears as my perception, because if it appears as my perception, then it's all me. It's not anything separate from me. If it's my perception or my projection, well, then it's all me. So to love myself is to love the world. You can't separate the two. Love thy neighbor as thyself is the way Christ put it. Love the world as yourself, because it is. Just even seeing that all you ever see is your own perception, even if you still believe there's something objective out there, it suddenly makes you realize that it's all my perception. It's all me. I am looking at me. Then you can take on the bigger question is, does anything exist outside of perception that I am misperceiving? Or is perceiving creating the world? In fact, there is no world separate from my perceiving. That was the Buddha's position. What did he say? The second bodhisattva practice? Perceiving the non-existence of external existence. The world is mind. And mind is nothing but thoughts. And thoughts are nothing but evanescent ripples in the infinite, limitless ocean of self-awareness being. From the Ribhu Gita. If only humans could learn from cats. Yes, indeed. Peter, good evening from Italy. Thank you, GP, for your comments concerning presence in the last satsang. No questions arising in the moment. I'm just here, open. Beautiful. You're very welcome, Sonia. Hafiz, good to see you. Good to see you. Dale, what do you do if you are in pain but have to interact with other people? It's a good practice. But any advice? Actually not. No advice. Sorry. Next. No, just... What to do if we are in pain? When pain comes, what do you do? The reflex response when pain arises is to resist, to distract, to anesthetize, to get away, to do something about it, to try to fix it. Now, obviously there's nothing wrong with taking steps, right? If you stick your hand in a fire, you take it out, right? If you do something and it hurts, you stop doing it. I've fallen on my bike a couple of times, right? And I realized that I'm a bit out of practice in riding a bike. It's been quite a long time. And this bike goes a whole lot faster and is a whole lot heavier. So I have to slow down and kind of learn to get the feel of it, right? Rather than just, going blithely on. Right? So there's something I can do about the pain, right? But taking a practical step that's quite obvious is different than the kind of pain that comes up that you can't really do anything about. Like a heartbreak, a disappointment, a betrayal, a circumstance you find yourself in and you cannot get out, and it's painful. A job you don't like, but there's no other, there's no other jobs to be had, right? You have to make some really dramatic change in your life. There are pains that come up for us that we cannot do anything about, at least not right in the moment. Now, we have been trained to try to suppress those, right? Well, we weren't trained. We actually do it quite naturally. This is what children do, because all sorts of things come up when we're a kid, all sorts of pains that we cannot do anything about because we're totally vulnerable. We're totally at the mercy of others. And so this natural mechanism of freezing that energy or suppressing it takes over, and it makes it work for us. But now, as we're older, we're conscious of it, right? And we know there's nothing we can do about it in this moment. But we've become awake enough that it's like, well, how do I deal with this intense pain, this discomfort, right? And I guess the deeper question from a spiritual perspective is, how do we keep that pain from turning into suffering and further trauma? Because the more it's suppressed, the more traumatic it is, because it hasn't really been freed, right? We haven't really liberated it. So the spiritually mature thing that we all have to learn to do is how to be with our pain, feeling it, without resisting it, pushing it away, trying to distract ourselves or reframe it, when there's nothing we can do about it. When we are forced to admit the truth, I cannot do anything about this. I have run out of moves. Now, this is one of the most difficult things for a human being to do. The nervous system was designed to do something, fight or flee. But if you can't fight it and you can't run from it, what do? Well, when you're unconscious, like when you're a child, when you're not conscious of it yet and you're powerless, it gets suppressed. It's the freeze mechanism, and the freeze mechanism is a trauma. Right? Now, as an adult, if you continue to do that, and we have all sorts of ways of doing that now, because we have a million distractions in social media. You have unlimited access to alcohol, recreational drugs of all kinds. We have unlimited access, really, to sex, to shopping, to credit, to buying online, to researching this and that. Right? We have unlimited ways to avoid feeling it. Right? But if you really want to, all of which are suppression, all of which maintain trauma or create new ones. Okay? And you can see that in people. We live in a world that is traumatized. Right? Look around. You can see it in people's faces. They've been traumatized because of all the things that are facing us. Climate change, nuclear war, COVID, economic crisis looming in every direction, natural disasters. I mean, you can see it. People are almost zombies, just sleepwalking, don't know what to do, or getting violent, just kind of reacting. Right? Well, that's the result of the unprocessed traumatic material. So, being with pain, right, is not just a nice thing to do until it passes. If to be with that, to allow yourself to feel it without being distracted, is the answer to human suffering. It is the answer. It is the way out of all of the traumas, the way to get back to the place of the creative expressive of nature that is our true nature. So, as hard as it may seem, what I say is, be with that pain. Now, you'll notice when that happens, and this is why I teach about it all the time, this is why I do courses on it, this is why I work with people, because it's not easy to do it by yourself. I have a million little techniques to make it easier to do, to help you do it, right? Including, humor and meditation and tapping. All of these things are to help somebody stay with it long enough that it can transform, that the trauma is actually released and not merely just reframed. Right? And so when you are with it, you'll notice the impulse to get away from it. Right? Okay, you don't follow that. Okay, I get it. I see that. I really want to run away from this. This hurts so badly. Then what you do is you start looking at this pain purely as sensation. Right? You step away from the story about it. Oh, it's this. I lost this, and this was terrible, and all those kind of things, and I wish I could get away from it. You can see the whole storyline going. And keep bringing your attention back to the body, just the feeling itself, right? Because no feeling comes and identifies itself. It doesn't say I'm pain. It doesn't even say those words, right? It's just a feeling. And you don't need any word, you don't need to name it in order to feel it, do you? But the moment you name it, all of the overhead, all of the thoughts and concepts that are associated with that word are now at play, intensifying it, right? This is the discipline, to get to the point where it is pure experience. Not experience and the story, but just the pure experience itself. And what you'll find is that it is a sensation. It is purely a sensation, be it emotional or physical. And that without the story, it is not as intimidating as it's not intimidating at all. And in fact, you don't have to get away from it because it's not doing anything. Now, obviously, if it's a really severe pain in the body or something like that, the body will take over. It's like, we got to do something, right? It won't even let you stop it. Right? So don't worry about that. But for the most part, what we're talking about here is emotional pain. Broken hearts, expectations that aren't being met, just kind of all of a sudden you find yourself alone or isolated, like millions of people did in COVID, billions of people actually, in COVID. Right? And so just be present. Try to be present with it, but not just, okay, I'm going to endure it till it goes away, because that's just another thought. Become curious. Turn towards it. Walk towards it. Look at it. Find out what its real nature is. Experience it as it actually is, the pure, raw sensation of it. And what you'll find is that in the process of doing that, as the story gets less and less, a space will open up inside. And the thing that holds the pain in place is not the story, it's the constriction that the story creates. Because now, this is what it is, creates a little a prison around it. But if I drop the story and I'm just present with it and I'm feeling it and I'm recognizing I don't want to feel, I want to run away from it, all of that, but instead I'm trying to see it as it actually is, this space does this. And it is the space that is keeping it in place. It is keeping that pain from transforming. If the space does this, suddenly the energy that it is, the focused pain now can begin to expand. It's because the process of pain, of grief, or whatever it is you happen to be feeling, right, is to transform itself into happiness. Happiness is the natural state. That is what it wants to do, but it can't because it doesn't have the environment to do it. So our job is to create that environment. And that's just, a really brief overview of how inner reconciliation works. So hopefully that helps, Dale. Hopefully that is some sound advice. Shanae, how do we heal the button? Why do some people behave differently towards us than others? How can we change that energetically? Can we tap on it? Maybe seeing it as a positive? I'll read the blog. Well, yes. I mean, the healing of the button is what it's all about. We want to remove the possibility of being triggered. We don't want to just create an environment which the trigger never happens. That's what retreats do. And I do retreats, right? And I'm looking forward to doing them again now that COVID has lessened. And in the retreat environment, you create this perfectly safe environment where stuff can come up, right? The triggers are no longer being triggered, which is this incredible feeling of expansiveness and joy, of community. Suddenly, things you couldn't talk about before you can talk about, and it's an incredibly safe container, right? But in my retreats, many retreats, that's all they ever do. That's as far as they get. There's this incredibly intense, great emotional high that comes, but then you leave the retreat, you hug everybody goodbye, you go back home, and before you know it, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're crying, you're angry, you're flipping people off in traffic. and you went, oh my God, I didn't get it. Oh, what's happened to me? And we blame ourselves for that. My own weakness, I didn't do it right. In my retreats, the last section of it is a preparation for the fact that that is going to happen, because the retreat environment is a place for you to examine yourself without the story, and creating an energetic space in which there's some freedom for this stuff to move. But that doesn't eliminate the triggers. When you understand that this is what's happening, and you go back into your real life and that button gets pushed, but you recognize now that the button has been pushed, and that the reflex happens, but you now have the capacity to let the button be pushed, watch the reflex happen, but not immediately go off into the behaviors and thoughts and feelings that are triggered. You begin to create the gap by which that association gets broken. Now the trigger itself is being dissolved. So that, push the button, nothing happens. Right? Not just protected so well that nothing pushes the button, because it's still there. And there will come a time where something will happen and that button gets pushed. But what happens if the button has been disconnected from the circuitry? So it gets pushed and it's like, what? Nothing. Nothing. That's called equanimity. That's called nothing bothers me, right? Because simply the triggers have been diffused through this conscientious application of inner reconciliation and the yoga of allowing. So some people behave differently towards us than others. Well, first off, because people are different, right? And what you mean to different people, right, is their perception of you, right? So they're going to be treating you differently and reacting to you based, unless they are really conscious, right? They are not going to be reacting to you based on you. They're going to be reacting based on their perception of you. They're going to be throwing stones or throwing flowers based on their concept of you. For the most part, when you're unconscious, you don't see anybody else. You only see yourself, but you think it's somebody else. You're like the kitten looking in the mirror, thinking it sees another kitten, and it's not. This is the nature of projection of the unconscious, the mind still stuck in samsara. Right? So recognizing that people are always seeing their own perception of you, projecting it onto you. And of course, if you're someone who learned how to take the blame, you think that their projection, that's all them, is you. Because you've identified with that, and you take it into yourself. But if you see, oh, it's not me at all, it's them. There's a story of Alexander the Great having recently conquered yet some other place. The people were not very happy about it. He erects statues of himself everywhere because he's the great, and he gets words. There's some of those who were not so happy about his conquering, who had been throwing rocks at one of his statues and knocked the head off, and it was reported to him. He said, "Your Majesty," somebody happened. He goes, "That's funny. I don't feel a thing." He recognized that other people, he was, let's talk, he was a tyrant, right, and a madman, and condescending, and all that kind of stuff. But he recognized that he didn't care what other people thought. He recognized that was their thought, not mine, right? And he held himself as Alexander the Great. So. I don't want you to walk around going, "I'm Shanae the Great," but I think you get the point. They don't see you. So when someone criticizes you, there's an old saying. When Peter talks about Paul, you learn more about Peter than you do about Paul. Because unless the person is conscious, right, has awakened to a certain degree, they will be talking to their perception, to their projection. The one who's awake sees you as you are, right, and is never critical. Funny that. Always loves you the way you are, because Because when I see things the way they are, it's nothing but lovable. There's nothing there but innocence and childlikeness and lovable, and pain and suffering that is compassion is felt for. So how you change it energetically is that recognition. And then notice when somebody says, notice how you react to it. Now, there's no way in the world you're going to be able to go fix everybody so nobody presses your buttons anymore, right? As Ramana Maharshi put it, well, when you're walking around and your feet are hurting because you're stepping on sticks and stones and thorns and stuff, you have two choices. One, you can either cover the entire world with leather, or you can wear shoes. So, simply take responsibility for the reaction. Now, when I say take responsibility, I don't mean you're responsible for the fact that you are reacting this way, because you're not. You're not to blame. But becoming conscious, you take the responsibility upon yourself voluntarily to undo that, to retrain the system so that that reaction doesn't take place anymore. And the way to do that is to become really interested. I mean, really just totally absorbed in interest in the reacting pattern itself. How does this work? To the point, it doesn't even matter who they are, what they said with it. You're so fascinated by the inner reaction that you're curious, you're studying it, you're watching it. How does this work? What are all the little piece parts? What used to be like press the button, bam, I react. I see there's dozens of little piece parts, little connecting points here. There's a whole series of things in a kind of a flow of causality. And I can just start like breaking the chain of causality at all these different places. Look at that. I can cut that off. Because once that is severed, it doesn't matter what somebody says to you or about you, because it's like, it's not me. And there's no arrogance in that. It's not me. It's not a rejection kind of thing. It's a genuine recognition that it's not me, it's a projection. And of course, we project upon ourselves too. The I'm to blame is a projection upon myself of something that isn't really true. Right? And can we tap on it? Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm going to be doing in this upcoming workshop of what if it's not your fault? Ending the tyranny of self-blame is the subtitle of it. So maybe seeing it as a positive. You don't have to do that. You don't have to reframe it. It's not a positive. Right? But it is an opportunity to disassociate my sense of well-being from somebody else's perception of me. That's the key. It's the disassociation. So I don't take their energy onto me. It's not that I'm not open to legitimate criticism from friends, but I'm not going to take on something that somebody's just projecting on me. They need to take that back to themselves. They're looking at themselves. They don't even see me. And in fact, I want to be with people who see me. And because that's where intimacy comes from. But in order for that to happen, I have to see myself. I have to clearly discern what is me and what isn't. And that's what the whole spiritual journey and self-inquiry is all about. That's why we're here. Very good. Very, very good. Susanna says, yes, you nailed it. I was the dumpster in my family. But how to teach friends, I no longer play that role. That's not your job to teach them. It's simply to not play the role anymore. And you may stop playing that role and be very clumsy about it at first, but you first have to do it here. And in that blog, I give some examples of how to do that. And that would be something very much that should come up over 2 hours in the upcoming class. And I'll be emailing about the class Tuesday. Tuesday I'll be announcing it and opening it up for people to jump in. And as always, there is a price tag on it, but as always, there will be a. I'm always open to people who can't afford it. In countries with really bad exchange rates and the like, you just have to write us a note to support at gpwalsh.com, and there's always people who are in there on scholarship, right? If you can pay the full amount, wonderful, and if you can donate to to help others who can't, that's great too. There's a page on my site for donations, and those of you who are ongoing donors, namely that are in the patron program, either in Patreon or on my site, you get a 10% discount on all the classes. So that's another thing you do. 10 or 15? 10, I think, yeah. So, so this is the good news. You do not have to teach other people how not to do it. You won't be able to do it. They're just going to keep doing it and keep doing it, waiting for you to come back with the reaction that they're expecting. That's it. They won't stop. They won't stop unless they wake up in some way. Okay? So don't wait for that. Don't hold your breath on that one. But so instead, you have to become untriggerable, which is forever. Again, cover the world in leather or wear shoes. Choice is yours. Yes, nature of our true self is that the infinite I, our we, our identity construct, merely the feedback, dream thoughts of the infinite I. If that is the case, then do we truly have free will? Wholeness. Hafiz, very good. We had a wonderful conversation the other day. Welcome to this world of non-dual inquiry. Well, yes. First off, the dreams, the thoughts. All right. Now, I may lose some of you here. I hope I don't go too far. What is the mind? It's a bunch of thoughts, right? If there are no thoughts, would there be a mind? Is there a thing called a mind generating thoughts? No. There's thoughts, and mind is a word we use to simply encapsulate or abstract this flow of thoughts that we experience. We say the mind, and I use the term all the time, the mind, right? The mind is doing this or that, but it's not. We say the wind is blowing, but the wind isn't blowing, right? Wind is a word we use because there's nothing blowing it, right? But it's a word we use, the wind blows, that encapsulates an incredibly complex functioning of nature. That is the heat, the uneven heating of the earth, the topography of the earth, gravity, and the fact that and temperature, which varies at altitude, all of those create air moving, right? Downhill, basically, and then uphill, and all sorts of stuff. Right? So it's a very complex thing that's happened, and we just simply abstract it into a word, and we say wind. Right? And then we use the word wind as a noun, as if there's something that is blowing, something pushing the wind. There's nothing pushing it. The same is true about the word body, right? 100 trillion cells, countless trillions of little bacteria and stuff like this, all functioning together, incredibly complex, and we sum that up in one two-syllable word, body. Right? Universe. The universe, right? We've abstracted, because we couldn't describe it any other way. We need those abstractions for language. Mind is such a thing. There's no such thing as a mind. Mind is an abstraction. It is a word that represents something that's far too complex to have to describe every time you want to mention it. So you have an idea what mind is. I have an idea what mind is. So when we use the word mind, we're pretty much on the same page, right? The problem is with the way mind works, the way this whole abstraction process works is the moment it becomes an abstraction, it becomes a thing. And it begins to collect stories around it, right? As if it was a functioning thing in and of itself, rather than an abstraction, which is what it actually is. So there is no such thing as mind. It is only a word. It does not exist outside of the realm of language. So put that aside. What is it that the word mind represents? A flow of thought. Now that's an actual experience, isn't it? We can all sit here and watch thoughts come and go. Shoop, in a constant flow, isn't it? It's like a river going by, right? You know, the water doesn't stop, right? You can't say, this is the river. No, it's not. It's this flow, it's the waves, it's the pool, it's the fish, it's everything, right? It's one whole. So now we've got this flow of what we call thought. We call a thought. But what's a thought? I mean, where does one thought end and another begin? You see, they just kind of morph one into another. It's like watching a cloud billow, right? So what then is the thought? Mind isn't generating the thought because there's no mind. That's an abstraction up here. Where are the thoughts coming from? Wow. Where's the origin of every single thought, including the thought I? Well, according to the Gita, what we call a thought is also just a thought. It's a word we've given to the phenomena. What's the phenomena? What's the actual experience that we've given the word thought to, or flow of thought, or thinking, or mind? What it is? The evanescent ripples on the infinite ocean of the self. Every thought is the vibrating of God, of the self, of the absolute beingness. Every single thought. Even the thought I, the thought I am. Now, who is this infinite self of which thoughts are rippling? What's your experience? Where are the thoughts coming from? Are they coming to you? From where? And if they're coming to you, then who's this you they're coming to, and who's this where they're coming from? But what if it isn't coming to and coming from? What if where they're coming from, where they're coming to are the same place? What if every thought you experience is simply the vibration of the consciousness that is you? That would mean that thought is an evanescent ripple on the self that is myself, which means that thought is simply me in action, the way a wave is the ocean. The thought is the self. Not all there is to the self, like the wave is not all there is to the ocean, but it is the ocean. The wave is water. The wave can be a wave going thousands of miles looking for the ocean, looking for water, right? Simply not aware that I am the water. This is the non-dual inquiry. So there is no mind, there is no thought. There is only the dynamic activity of consciousness. Consciousness in its essence is the still, unmoving, absolute emptiness of pure awareness. Consciousness in its nature is the dynamism that makes an entire universe constantly generated every single second. Not an act of creation, but an act of self-expression. Not an act of self-expression as an act of will, but simply this is the nature of being itself. It does not have to will it into existence, it just is. Thus, there is no free will if there's no separate self. But there's also not predestination, any more than the jazz player's performance it does tonight is predestined. It is the spontaneous arising of the infinite, illimitable nature of the self, and you are that self. It is your nature making itself known. You're the kitten looking in the mirror, thinking it's seeing another kitten. But in this case, we're not talking about the projection of an imaginary self. We're talking about the self that is not projecting itself onto that, but is literally expressing itself in that. How's that, Hafiz? Hopefully, I didn't lose anybody in that, but if I did, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You don't have to understand it. It'll keep coming. Sonia, I'm fascinated by your high-tech straw. I keep looking at it in awe, like a kid who just saw something super cool in Disneyland. Okay. It is pronounced in Spanish, bombilla. I learned, with Spanish I learned in Argentina, so it's bombilla. And it's a straw. Yeah. It's basically came from mate, right? And it's like tea, which you just dump in loose, but instead of like filtering it or putting it into a tea bag or something, the filter's in the end of the straw. So you pour the hot water in, whatever you're going to put in, you put it in, and you sip it. You don't have to filter out, use the little thing. And so they're called tea straws or drink straws or something like that, and you can find them all over the place, right? They're on Amazon and the like. So there's my little, I just fell in love with this because I started going, a long time ago, I started going to Argentina a lot. I learned about mate and the ritual of it. I just fell in love with this to the point where I'll just make coffee. I'll put a little coffee in there, just the grounds. All the tea, I do loose tea. So I use this, as you notice, all the time. I really very like it a lot. And I'm really upset when I can't find it. And David Yeager, keep breaking down how Christianity works. It's very helpful. There's so many classes I like to do. I have to start an institution somewhere where I can just keep doing them and teach other people how to do it as well. Because the Abrahamic religions, right, all grew out of basically warrior tribes. A warrior tribe. It is the mythological basis. It is the mythological story of a particular people that came up with an explanation of things for their own particular ethnic identity. Happens absolutely everywhere. Every culture is like that. The nature of these particular kinds of cultures, because the God is separate, is the creator, and it was a warrior tribe, right? It became God, God gave you this land. The only problem is you have to kill everybody there to get it. Now, if it was really God, he wouldn't have to do that, right? But this is the way it works. The mythology upon which Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is based never actually happened. Right. I hate to break it, There's no evidence that the Jews were actually enslaved in Egypt. There's nothing to show. Matter of fact, exactly the opposite. It shows that the people who came there because they wanted to. It was a great honor, according to their religion, which means the Exodus, the Passover, all of those are mythological stories. Right. Now, this particular warrior tribe ended up becoming the one that ended permeating all over the place. And the whole, I could go into the whole story of Christ and Christianity and its origin and like that, because I like to study those things and I listen to people talk about it, just so that I can understand it better and teach it better. It's not clear whether a Christ existed. I know somebody existed, not because there's any historical evidence, because there's almost nothing, but because the things that were said by him were so different than the traditional Jewish point of view or the Roman point of view at the time, that there was obviously some kind of enlightened being who was making these statements originally. And that's the basis by which I know there was somebody. I have no idea about any of the stories and any of the other kinds of stuff. But his story and the Jewish story got glommed together by the Roman Empire, which was looking for a means by which they could unify and indoctrinate an empire that had spread, all the way up into northern England, Germany, all over Europe, right? and thus a religion was created that was in the service of empire. And, the warrior nature of Judaism was a perfect way to do it, and the figure of Christ becoming God himself became the perfect figure for that to happen. And so this is basically what happened. The idea of original sin, eternal punishment, all of these kinds of things, such powerful ways of manipulating human behavior that it became the go-to means, and it's still at work. The early Catholic Church was just the epitome of marketing, right? The epitome of propaganda. But it was understood. It was understood prior to that. I mean, everybody did it. Alexander did it. The Egyptians did it. The Athenians did it. Everybody did it. It's just kind of the nature of power, and power absorbs religious ideas, the genuine deep religious experiences or non-dual experiences that punctuate all of the various kinds of religions. But that got pushed aside or reframed in order to fit the cultural narrative of basically of power and control and self-justification. So that's it in a nutshell. So really trying to separate out what was the inspired stories there and what wasn't. Well, I did that for a long time until I got really fed up with the whole process and nobody listening to me, and got more interested in the conditioning and how the human nervous system worked, and then eventually Advaita Vedanta and Zen. That I don't bother doing that anymore. But I will teach that to people because we've all inherited the incredible burden of guilt and original sin that was so fundamental to this and is still being perpetrated everywhere. With the evangelical movement, they've taken the horror of the Catholic Church and multiplied it 100 times. It's just absolutely insidious and manipulative and wants control. I mean, I could go on about it, but I won't. Anyway, Christianity is best summed up as this: God is love. This is where Christ lived. I and my Father are one. As he said in the Gospel of Thomas, "He who drinks of my mouth shall become as I am, and I shall be he." That is pure, non-dual, mystical. Buddha could have said that. That is true Christianity. Everything else is bullshit. Self-destructive, and manipulative bullshit. And I've had some nasty things said to me about that. So anyway. Let's see. The Mascaranas. God said, "I am holy and blameless, so even though if I did do something called wrong, I am still blameless. Of course, I may say sorry to the person I have drunk or hurt. I am still blameless." In truth, yes. And I can say that, right? Because that which actually does the offensive behavior is not you. Now, you are responsible for it. You have to take ownership. You have to make amends if you can. You have to repent, right? But when we really look at the mechanism, we find that all the harm, all the terror, all the evil, all the greed, all the brutality is the result of the unconscious identification with the separate self. When consciousness begins to dawn that I am not my conditioning, and I begin to get in touch with my true nature, the potential for doing that becomes increasingly less and less and less. You simply can't do it anymore. Now, that doesn't mean times in your life you can find yourself doing it and you went, oh my God, I was sucked back into the unconscious. But knowing that, even the act of the backsliding will stimulate you even more to new levels of awareness. So yes, You are pure. You are innocent. Our job is to separate the tares from the wheat. It is to separate the pure being from the corruption of the ego. The ego was born in sin. When you're talking about being born in sin, we're not talking about you, yourself, your true being, but the ego was, because it was never real. It was always a fabrication in order just to keep you safe. So it's never been accurate. It's never been truthful. It's never been stable. It's never been trustworthy. It has always been a flake. It's always been a chameleon. It's never truly honest. It's always hiding or grasping. That's the nature of the egoic mind. You are not the egoic mind. That is the pattern of thought that make up the false sense of I. You are never that. But identified with that, you take that on and become that. Disidentification from that frees you to recognize the original innocence, the original purity that you are. And in that purity, your compassion awakes for all of the transgressions that you've done, for all the people that you've hurt and all the people that have hurt you. And then this is the true meaning of repentance, a transformation of character. This is where the true sense of being takes over the egoic mind, dissolves it, and establishes a completely new being. All things are made new. In the story of Jacob, who becomes Israel, the story of Jacob is a fascinating one because he's Israel, right? He's what the children of Israel are named after. He's an ass. He's conniving. He takes advantage of people. He's a deal maker. He's dishonest. He's manipulative in all sorts of ways. He manipulates all sorts of things. He steals. He's a whore. I could go into the story. It's absolutely fascinating. But he finally has to come face to face with the consequences of his own actions, including stealing his brother's inheritance and the father's blessing. Right? And the father's blessing onto the son, it had to go to the firstborn, was like this huge deal. I mean, it's a huge deal. I mean, you are no longer, the father's blessing, you are no longer the son. You are now the head. You are. It's important. Well, he stole that from his brother. He pretended to be his brother and got it from his father. It's amazing. Anyway, he recognizes he's amassed all this wealth and he has to go back to meet his brother, and he's terrified that his brother is just going to kill him. So he divides all his goods into two. He's got wives now and a bunch of children, 2 wives. So he divides it all up. He's got all sorts of herds. He's got all sorts of stuff. He divides it in 2 in the hopes that if he attacks one, maybe one will get away. And he makes himself a nice little camp all the way at the back, behind everybody. But in night, it says, there was an angel that wrestled with Jacob for the entire night. And after a while, the angel said, "Let me go, the day is breaking." And Jacob says to him, "I will not let you go until you bless me." That blessing represents an absolute transformation of character. So, and the angel, of course, was the truth, right? He was wrestling with the consequences of his own actions and the result that he was sitting there, that he was about to be killed and perhaps everything he had. And the angel then says to him, after he says, "I'm not going to let you go." So a light dawned. How many times we have a little light? Oh, great, I'm good now, and off we go. Instead of wait, no, I want this light to completely rid me of everything that is in the way of me seeing who I truly am. And so the angel says, "Okay, well, what's your name?" Now the word name in the Bible is extremely important. The names represent the essence of the myth of the whole story, the whole the whole purpose of it, right? The names of places and people, they all are symbolic. They're not actual names, right? And it says, and this is beautiful, it's in the Amplified Bible, the way they transfer it. It says, after the angel asks that, what's your name? He says to himself, he whispers, in shock of realization, he whispers, Jacob, swindler, supplanter, schemer, trickster. That's what the word Jacob means. Just total revelation of who he had actually been in the presence of the truth. And then the truth says, well, guess what? Your name's not going to be that anymore. You're no longer going to be swindler, trickster, supplanter, or schemer. You will be Israel, the Prince of God, the striver with God. In that story is represented a transformation of character, a deep repentance. Right? Seeing what one has done, what has to happen is a compassion has to emerge, a willingness to take responsibility, while at the same time taking on forgiveness, which is to see your innocence, and in that innocence, seeing the innocence of everyone else. And the beauty of that story is that Jacob, instead of staying at the back, goes all the way up to the front and meets his brother alone. And he just falls on his knees, apologizes, take everything I have. And his brother says, I've got everything I need. I don't need that. And his brother takes him and hugs him. And Jacob says to him, I have seen your face like I've seen the face of God, and you are pleased with me. This is the transformation that completely transformed the entire circumstance. Now that's a mythological interpretation of a story that is, for most people, regarded as historical truth. To this day, right? You know, Israel believes that this is the land that God had promised, and it's okay for them to wipe out other people that are in the way. The same idea, mistaking a mythological representation of a deep transformation into a historical fact that justifies the most heinous of actions. Now, taking that personally, this is what it means to find your blamelessness, to find your original innocence, to find the source of your being, and then from that point of view, completely unraveling the mess that we've made of human life. It's highly practical, highly direct. This is the awakening to compassion. This is the path of the Bodhisattva. So, I'll let it go with that. I wasn't planning on going into a mystical interpretation of stories today. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Shanae, GP, I have another question. Okay. This week I felt such utter existential sadness. I found the feeling of being so inadequate, overbearing, despite having an intellectual understanding of spiritual concepts. I feel so basic in such a vast and beautiful world. How can we understand existential feelings? Is there validity in them? Yes. Oh, Shanae, yes. This is what the child actually feels. You know, when I talked before about the child in the midst of that trauma, they are feeling the existential threat of death. What existential? My very existence. To the child, it is a matter of life and death. That's why the nervous system steps in, because the child can't, takes over, creates the traumas, creates the suppression, buries things down, creates layers of protection on top of it that we now have to make the mythic journey back down, like Jacob did to the place, through those layers of who you had become, in order to get back to that absolute root, the pure root of being, which was the original innocence, which is the child, and it was not his fault or her fault. And so, yes, when you're feeling existential sadness, you're feeling that child again. You're feeling the original innocence. You're feeling that what was lost. You're feeling the grief. You're feeling the genuine nature of what was lost. The loss of that innocence. This is the pain we've all lived with. This is what the nervous system has been trying to compensate for. To let yourself feel that, to fall into it, to literally fall into it, is to embrace your death. This is what is meant by the crucifixion. And there's no resurrection without a crucifixion. There's no life without death. He who loses his life for my sake will find it. You fall into that existential sadness, that existential grief. You lose your life in that, and that's where you're going to find it. This is the essence of all of the myths, every single one of them. This is what they're all pointing to. This is the essential hero's journey. This is Luke Skywalker. This is all of it, all of them. But this is you. They're not meant to be legends about great people. They're meant to be a mirror in which you can see your own life. And believe me, if your understanding was just intellectual, you would not be sensitive to that feeling of sadness, that existential angst. You also wouldn't be listening to me. There's plenty of other non-dual teachers out there that appeal to the head, right? And you can get all sorts of great intellectual concepts. But you're here because your heart is open. Your understanding is not merely intellectual. Right? You are feeling it. You are feeling the existential angst, not thinking it. This is, of course, the understanding that starts in vision. It starts in what we see, but immediately begins to move south. It immediately begins to start moving into the life. First, the first place it begins to heal and dissolve is in the realm of emotion, the realm of our feelings. We begin to feel the stuff that we didn't want to feel before, the sadness, the grief, the angst, anger and rage, all these things, right? But we allow ourselves to feel them. We sink into them. We die into them. And then what happens is it begins to now move through the feelings and into the whole nervous system, into your life. So it goes from the seeing to the feeling to the being, to the point at some point eventually it has so taken over just the everyday functioning of life that you are the sage. Because the sage is not someone who has wisdom. The sage is wisdom appearing as a human being. And that appearing happens because the human being, that sense of self, has surrendered itself to it and thus has disappeared. It is simply fallen away into nothingness so that the true self is seen in its wholeness and in its beauty. And that is you. And that is the process that is happening. You didn't choose it. You didn't start it. You don't have to maintain it. All you have to do is surrender to it. How can we understand essential feelings? Yes. And so, yes, there's the validity in them. They are the calling home. Although sometimes that calling seems like it's being called into oblivion. For the ego, it is oblivion. For you, it is resurrection. Jennifer, beautiful, thank you. You're welcome. Gil, hello, Gil. The external world is mind. How can you explain the mathematical exactitude of what we observe? Is it this an illusion? No. The illusion is thinking that somehow this mathematical exactitude and precision and harmony and beauty is an accident. It's intelligence. It's intelligence reflected, right? It's not the beauty that has been imposed on chaos. Chaos is an illusion. There is no chaos. It doesn't exist. Look around. There's form to absolutely everything. What we call mathematical exactitude, right, is a word because we've perceived the incredible harmony of it. Now, what can conceive? and perceive the harmony, accept the harmony itself. You are that harmony, perceiving yourself going, my God, it's fucking perfect. So what happens is we get in the mind of, oh, look, it's so exact, it's so mathematically we think that the mathematical perfection or exactitude preceded it. No, it's our interpretation of it. It's us coming to understand it. It's laid on top of it. It's the perfection that we are trying to explain. But when you recognize that that which is trying to explain the perfection is the perfection itself, because you're not separate from that. You're not something else. There's not this great perfect universe and then there's me. It's the whole. It's one indivisible whole. But we are so stuck in the idea that I am the body and the universe is something else, that we're looking at the universe as something else, trying to figure out why it's so amazing. It is amazing, and all of the things we've done to explain it are also amazing, but they're all secondary. The word for something is not the thing. It's always secondary. The mathematical precision that we see in it is not the essence of it. That's secondary. It's us describing it. The reality is what we perceive as that. It is perfectly harmonious, and it's perfectly harmonious because it is one. And there cannot be any kind of inner conflict or discord or inharmony in one, in the infinite, the indivisible, the irreducible. There can't be anything other than harmony. And that oneness, which remains completely unseen and cannot even be put into any kind of formula, is what all of this beauty reflects. And it makes it possible. What we're seeing is the nature of the one, including all of our mathematical models and scientific models and religious ideas and metaphors and myths. They're all secondary as we simply stand in silent awe of the perfection of what is. Thank you, Gil. Andrew, do you have a view on the law of attraction? Specifically, might we all be mental beings, matter being condensed thought? Just wondering if you have a view. Thanks for everything. I do. And the law of attraction is a very immature, self-absorbed, and ultimately destructive way of trying to make the universe conform to what my ego wants. That's the problem with it. It's not that it's completely untrue, right? But it's trying to come to some kind of a relationship with the universe, starting from the position that I'm a separate being and the universe is out there somewhere, right? And if I think the right thoughts, the universe will condense or be attracted or be drawn into my life. Right? And of course, what I want it to become is completely in conformance with what I believe is the right way things should be, all of my ideas and beliefs and assumptions. And the thing about the law of attraction, why it is so destructive, is that it never questions the desires. It never questions why this. And if you'll notice, the law of attraction, which became so popular, in a culture that is so self-oriented, look at all the programs about the law of attraction. None of them are about how do we attract sanity, less guilt, less greed, how do we expect universal prosperity, the end of war, universal peace. It's never about that. It's how do I get the car? How do I get the relationship? How do I get better health? How do I get the houses? How do I get the money? How do I get career? How do I get success? It has been commandeered by the ego and made even worse, right? I mean, the Secret came out in 2006. Is the world better off? My God, no. We're orders of magnitude further down the path of self-destruction, right? It should have been an open door, but it got commandeered and sucked in to a highly materialistic and highly selfish culture, which Chris Hedges even calls the cult of the self. right? Selfies everywhere. I don't actually enjoy something. I take pictures of it so I can use it for my personal thing, or I'll stand next to it. It's like you can see, it's a sickness. And that sickness is now interpreting it. Now, what's actually the truth, and I sometimes have referred to it as the law of reflection, right? But let me just go right to the jugular because I don't have as much time. There is no matter. Matter is a concept projected on experience. The belief that I am a separate self, I am a body, that there's something exists out there, inevitably led the idea, well, what is that thing out there made of? Well, it's all made of matter. That is the leading theory. It is the materialistic theory, or the physical reality school of thought, which dominates science right now. Right? But there is a small but growing group that say, no, it's not. It's consciousness, which is the fundamental particle. And it's not a particle at all. It's not even a field. It is an indescribable substance. And that matter is only a concept. That this is consciousness. Right? It is not something separate from consciousness. It is not something out there that consciousness is perceiving. It is made of consciousness. And matter is an illusion. Matter is a false belief projected upon experience. The Dalai Lama says that matter is not a fact. Dalai Lama says that matter is how did he refer to it? I mean, he even referred to it as faith. Right? It's not a scientific fact. It's never been proven that it even exists. And in fact, the more they've gotten, remember, matter used to think little tiny particles. But there are no little tiny particles. And Niels Bohr, the quantum physicist, said that which we regard as real, we believe to be real, is made of that which cannot be regarded as real. Now what do you do with that? Right? Matter is a concept. And as such, it's not that consciousness condenses or thoughts condense into matter. Even thoughts are a concept. All there is consciousness. There is no matter. Recognizing that, we begin to pay attention to our beliefs, our assumptions, and when we do, they do get transformed. And when they get transformed, because there is no matter out there that's being influenced, all we are experiencing is perception, the universe in which we live will change. But the purpose of that is not so I can get the girl or the car or the job. That is the ego. The ego itself doesn't exist. It too is a concept based on matter, based on the sense of a separate self. The sense of a separate self, I am the body, makes the universe matter and creates an ego internally. So internal it's ego, external it's matter. Neither one exists. They are both illusory. Come back to yourself, which is the consciousness that is aware of everything. And everything is within it, and everything is made of it. I went right to it without going through any of the intermediate steps there. So, because it's going on 2 hours. Francis King. Hi, G. It seems to me that non-duality can be misunderstood, which produces a nihilistic attitude that misses the point. Yes, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. You can get really stuck in the head, and then you get, well, what do I do about suffering? I mean, the Neo-Advaita, or misunderstanding of non-duality, just simply tries to explain suffering away. Oh, it's not really happening, it doesn't really exist, it's just an illusion. Right? Now, the Zen monk, if the Zen monk says that to the Zen master, they get a big-ass whack up the side of their head. Oh, so that doesn't exist, and that's just an illusion? Bam, well here, have some more, until that nonsense gets beat out of them. Because without the deep compassion that characterizes the bodhisattva, the ultimate attainment of Buddhahood is not possible. You'll get lost in the absolute, you'll get stuck in the absolute. And it's one of the places you can get stuck. That's the devas, the heavenly beings, that are stuck there for 1,000 years until finally they are confronted with suffering. It is the experience of suffering that takes us out of that. And of course, remember, it was the experience of suffering that set Buddha on the path that led to enlightenment, but enlightenment was not what he was seeking. It was the end of suffering. Don't deny the suffering. Embrace it, and it will lead you out of suffering into true nirvana. Gil, there are feelings and thoughts, and there are feelings and thoughts about those feelings and thoughts. Yes, it is the latter which is deeper and less obvious, which keeps us suffering. Perfect. Perfect, 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 perfect. Yes, that's exactly the case. There are feelings and thoughts as to what they actually are, but they are not. They don't announce themselves as feelings and thoughts, do they? They don't come and say, hey, I'm a feeling. That's the mind. That is... It's just an experience, which then we say is a thought. We generalize it into a bunch. Oh, these are all thoughts, an abstraction. Oh, thoughts, there's a mind. And then we assume there's something there generating the thoughts. They're not being generated, they're you. They're coming from you. And then we imagine there's this other thing, a mind, and then an ego, and then other stuff that are producing all these thoughts. Oh, I got to get rid of my ego. Look at all the horrible thoughts it's producing. There is no ego. Throw them away. Throw that whole idea out and just be with the thoughts themselves. And you'll find they have no origin. They didn't come from anywhere. They just arose with another thought that says, this is my thought, and another one says, this is a problem thought. But they have no origin. They have no beginning. They didn't come from anywhere. And they don't go anywhere. This is the true non-dual. There was no beginning to this. There was no cause. They do not exist. Boom, something arose and disappears. They have no existence. They have no origin. Okay, that's maybe a bit too much. Oh, Ted says, easier said than done. Yes, but what else are you going to do? Right? Don't do it and suffer. Right? Do it and progressively suffer less. But don't even fall for that idea. Oh, it's easier said than done, which is simply the way in which the habit energy that we call mind, the habit energy of those thought patterns, keeps you from examining them closely. What if the only reason it's easier said than done is because you believe it's easier said than done? What if that's the only thing that makes it so? You'll see that thought has no origin. It just popped up and you believed it. It's not true. It doesn't have any fact behind it. It had no creator. It was just a thought, and you believed it. And believing it, shoomp, it now becomes your experience because you are the creator. You are the source of it all. Whew. Dale said, I did ask how to deal with pain in front of other people. I'm comfortable by myself. It's a bit trickier with others. Yes, just the same process. Practice, practice, practice. Practice by yourself. And little by little become more aware that it's happening when you're with others. And in that awareness, because you're practicing it, it'll be, oh, okay, I can do the same thing here when I'm with others. It's a different environment, buttons pressed a little harder, but I can do the same thing. Practice. You know, meditation is a practice you do by yourself so that you can do, so that you are different in public. You know, you're a musician, you practice your instrument. You practice way more and for longer times than you perform. You know, 1,000 to 1 ratio between practicing and performing, right? Why? So that when you step on the performance, it's completely natural. And of course, there's another element. You practice and practice, but you do have to perform because that's a different dynamic. But we practice, then we perform. And now we're practicing performing by performing. But little by little, the two merge, right? Until it just becomes this seamless whole. That's what's happening. You're simply practicing being yourself. Which I know sounds strange, but that's what it is. Gil, I can be aware of my own consciousness, yet there is no I which can observe my I. Observer and observed are one. I find that a bit baffling. Yes, because you can't conceive it. The mind, that is the thought patterns, trying to form a thought pattern around that can't, because thought patterns cannot form without a subject and object. Thought is dualistic, right? The non-dual cannot be thought, right? So no thought. So yes, try to think it and you will be baffled. But instead, feel it. Right? Can, and there's some reason you can apply to it that will just keep pushing you outside the mind, because the mind can't go beyond this point, and that is, what can observe other than the eye? But can the eye observe itself? There would have to be two. For me to observe anything, subject, object. So I cannot observe I, and yet I know that I'm I. Let me put my attention on that sense of knowing, which itself is being observed, right? But that's as close as I can get. Right? And let's see if going there, I can go completely beyond the mind into the purely non-dual. Let's just see. Try it out. Oh my goodness, there's a lot to... Oh, there we go. They finally showed up. Block user. Dunk. Gone. Probably a whole bunch of different names, too. Yeah, there we go. A couple of different names. Guys down at the bottom with the adult websites that the bots show up. God, it's so funny. You're not going to get a very responsive crowd here, I'm afraid. You should really stop trying. Anyway. Oh, yes. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. To all the mothers out there. To all the mothers out there. Thank you very much. And to all of us who had mothers, happy Mother's Day to you. And for those of you who had mothers that were not kind of the goddess mother energy that we would have preferred, turn your attention inward to that goddess mother that lives in you. Because the goddess mother, which was the first goddess we worshipped as human beings, it was the mother god, okay, does live within you and is accessible to you and is that which has really been guiding you through this entire process. It's just that is just a personification of the pure real love. And on that note, name is pronounced Jill. Okay, Jillian. Okay. All right then. Thank you for sharing and refine another deep insight point of view. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Hello. Thanks. Mind is blown. Very good. They're also blameless according to what God said. Everybody, yes. What happens to people who don't pay taxes? Well, they either get away with it or they don't, right? I mean, render unto Caesar's the things that are Caesar's. Thank you for sharing such a refined, inclusive, and heart-centered message. I really needed this right now. Thank you, Asher. Yeah. Thank you, G. Wonderful satsang. Your background looks like an intriguing piece of art. I was listening to you, but I couldn't take my eyes off the background. It's just a beautiful $15, $20, photographic equipment, for backgrounds, for photo shoots. And this is kind of a classic one for headshots. And I actually had to turn it sideways because it was made for headshots and not for landscape. And so I just kind of set it on there. I put it up on the wall. I got a couple of flowers to go behind it to make for a nice... this will be my setup. I had it over there before by the window with the trees in the background, but it's like the only... it's a small apartment, and that's the only living space I have. So I'm over here. It's off to the side, and it's supposed to be a dining area. So I could basically leave it set up here, and I don't have to be taking things up and down all the time. So anyway, brilliant, says Jill. Happy end of the day. Wonderful talk. Great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining me in satsang. Hope you check out the show next Tuesday and look for that email. If you're not on the email list, go to gpwalsh.com. And right up the front there, you can sign up for the Angels in the Basement book, where I explain a lot of this traumatic stuff. And that'll put you on the mailing list, because Tuesday I will be announcing this class called "What If It's Not My Fault?" or "It's Not All My Fault: Ending The Tyranny of Self-Blame. It's going to be focusing on tapping. And that will be a week from Tuesday. So I'll be announcing it and opening it up for people to register on Tuesday. So until then, everybody, thank you all for being here. I love you all. Namaste.